When I feigned my death, my son did not call for an ambulance. He only whispered to his wife, "Check if she changed the will." The fragrant aroma of rosemary and sautéed garlic filled the small kitchen, mingling with the frigid air of a Christmas Eve in Tuscany. I, Ilara, a 70-year-old widow, carefully brushed the final layer of olive oil onto the leg of lamb that was turning a perfect golden brown in the oven. This was the favorite dish of Julian, my only son, a successful businessman always preoccupied with his grand plans. I stepped into the cozy living room. The light from the candles on the silver candelabra reflected off the rustic stone walls. The dining table was formally set for three: myself, Julian, and his wife, Isabel. Isabel was a modern, sharp woman who always appreciated the finer things, like this polished set of heirloom dinnerware. I had even folded the linen napkins into the shape of swans, a small detail Julian had loved as a child, hoping to evoke a warm memory. My husband, Arthur, a quiet and warm ceramic artist, had been gone for 6 months. Since that day, I was all alone in this country house. His leather armchair still sat by the fireplace where the flames crackled, but the chair was empty. The silence in the home we had built together over 40 years was sometimes unbearable. I always longed for my children's calls, hoping for their visits to make the house feel less cold. I turned on the old stereo, letting the sweet Christmas melodies of Vivaldi drift gently through the air. 7 o'clock. Julian and Isabel had said they would arrive at 7:30, only 30 more minutes. This family dinner was what I had been looking forward to for weeks. I truly needed to hear laughter in this house. I needed their presence to get through this night. Just for tonight, I told myself. I poured myself a glass of Brunello, the ruby-red liquid shimmering in the glass, the very wine Arthur had loved most. I stood by the window watching the first snowflakes of the season begin to fall gently on the small garden. Everything was ready. I had prepared a perfect Christmas Eve. Now, all that was left was to wait. 7:30, then 8 o'clock, 8:30. Time crawled by, dragging a heavy silence with it. The lamb in the long-extinguished oven began to lose its crispy skin. The side dishes on the table grew cold. The fire in the hearth dwindled to glowing red embers. The candles burned nearly to their ends, wax dripping in long trails down the holder. The telephone on the table remained silent, its screen dark. Not a single call, not a single text message. My hope flickered out with the candles. Perhaps they were truly busy. I tried to console myself. Julian's business had not been doing well lately. Maybe something unexpected had come up. At precisely 9 o'clock, the doorbell suddenly rang, its sharp sound cutting through the silence. My heart leaped. They were here. They must have run into some trouble on the road. A relieved smile touched my lips as I hurried to the door, forgetting the exhausting wait. But when I opened the heavy wooden door, there was only the cold night, and the snow falling more heavily, not a soul in sight. The gravel path leading to the gate was empty. It must be the village children playing a prank, I sighed, a wave of disappointment washing over me. I closed the door, the feeling of letdown heavier than before. 10 o'clock, then 11. I no longer had the strength to clear the table. I sat motionless in Arthur's armchair, staring at the 3 empty place settings. They were not coming. After that false doorbell, there had not been another sound. They had not even bothered to call with a word of explanation. They had completely forgotten me. Out of a mindless habit, I picked up my phone and opened social media, perhaps seeking a small distraction from the emptiness. The first picture that appeared on my feed was a new post from Mrs. Carlotta, Isabel's mother. The photo showed the whole family gathered happily around a large fireplace. Mrs. Carlotta, Mr. Lorenzo, Isabel's brother, and my son, Julian. He was sitting there, his arm wrapped tightly around Isabel, a radiant smile on his face, looking so joyful. The caption read, "A warm Christmas with the family. So blessed to have both our children here." The phone slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a dry thud. Everything shattered. There was no sudden business emergency. They had lied. Or rather, they had not even bothered to lie to me. They simply did not come, without an explanation, without an apology. They had chosen to be with Isabel's family, leaving me alone on Christmas Eve with a cold dinner and absolute silence. I stared at the photograph, my son's smile, his happy expression. I had not just been forgotten, I had been intentionally discarded, treated as if I did not exist. A chill ran down my spine. The earlier sadness was quickly replaced by something else. A hard, clear realization. All my illusions of a family gathering had vanished into thin air. Now, only the cold, naked truth remained. The next morning, I woke up in Arthur's armchair, my neck stiff. The house was cold, the remnants of the failed feast still on the table. The pain of the previous night had subsided, giving way to a numb emptiness. Just then, there was a knock at the door, firm and formal, not the knock of someone I knew. I opened it to find two local police officers, Inspector Rossi and a younger officer, standing on the threshold. A sense of unease rose within me. What now? Were Julian and Isabel okay? Mrs. Moretti, Inspector Rossi said, his voice tinged with sympathy. May we come in for a few minutes? There is some information regarding your husband's accident that we need to convey. My heart sank, but my initial worry eased somewhat. It was not bad news about my children. It was about Arthur. Confused, I invited them in. The accident had happened 6 months ago. Why were they here now? Is there a new discovery, Inspector? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Not exactly new, ma'am. We have just received the final technical forensics report from Rome, Inspector Rossi explained. As you know, administrative procedures take quite a bit of time. We thought you should be the first to know the official results. Ah, so that was it. I sat down, bracing myself to hear the painful details again. Inspector Rossi got straight to the point. Ma'am, the forensic analysis has confirmed it. Mr. Arthur's death was a tragic accident. The report indicates the cause was brake system failure due to age-related wear and tear leading to sudden malfunction on the mountain pass. I listened in silence, but when I heard the words brake system, a cold dread washed over me. I remembered vividly, just 1 week before that fateful trip, Arthur himself had taken the car for maintenance. When he returned, he had told me, "Don't you worry, Marco. The mechanic said the brakes are perfect. Good as new." Arthur was an incredibly cautious man. He would never have driven on that mountain road if he had even the slightest doubt about its safety. The police's conclusion and my memory were in complete contradiction. The two realities could not coexist. "We offer our condolences once again," the young officer said, breaking my train of thought. He handed me a sealed evidence bag. "This is Mr. Arthur's phone. We have examined it and found nothing unusual." I took the bag. Through the clear plastic, I could see the shattered screen of Arthur's phone. As the young officer turned away, I heard him murmur to Inspector Rossi, a comment not meant for my ears. "We saw the last message he sent to his son, but it is not important, just family matters." Not important. Those words stuck in my mind. After what had happened last night, I knew that nothing related to this family was not important. The police had returned the last piece of evidence. They had closed the case with a conclusion full of contradictions. But for me, another door had just creaked open. After the door closed, I sat silently in the living room. The sealed bag containing Arthur's phone lay cold on the table. The mechanic Marco's words echoed in my head. "The brakes are perfect, good as new." A skilled mechanic would not make a mistake about such a vital detail. The police's conclusion was a lie. But why? My fingers trembled as I tore open the sealed bag and took out Arthur's phone. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. I turned it on, my heart pounding. The young officer's murmur. The last message he sent to his son. I opened the sent messages folder. The last message, sent on the morning of the accident, was to Julian. I read it, and then read it again. Julian, that contract is for you. Just remember your promise to me about your mother. The words were familiar, but now they carried an entirely different weight. I scrolled further, hoping to find something, anything, that could explain this terrible discrepancy. And then I saw it. An audio file in the notes folder, simply titled Pottery Studio, dated the night before Arthur died. Arthur often used the voice recorder for his fleeting ideas. I pressed play. The first sound was the familiar whir of the pottery wheel. Then, the sound of a door opening, and Julian's voice, harsh. You have to sign this guarantee. It is the only way I can get out of this. Arthur's voice was low, weary. Julian, you are asking me to throw our entire fortune into a fire. I cannot do that. Then came Isabel's voice, sharp as a knife. If you do not help, we will have to find our own way. Things would be much easier if you were no longer in the way. My heart stopped. It was a threat. Then came the sound of something being knocked over, a door slamming shut. But the recording did not stop. There was a long silence, filled only by Arthur's heavy breathing. And then, my husband's broken voice came through, as if he were speaking to himself, or to me from the other side. Ilara! I heard them. They were talking about the breaks. Our son. His voice broke. I cannot report him, Ilara. I cannot. I have failed as a father. A choked sob. Maybe this is the only way. The insurance policy will help him clear his debts. Maybe he will come to his senses. He promised he would take care of you. Ilara, please forgive me. The recording ended. The phone fell from my hands. I could no longer cry. A horrifying, numbing truth enveloped me. My husband had not just been killed. He had known his death was coming. He had overheard his son and daughter-in-law's plan. And out of a blind love, out of a father's guilt, he had chosen to remain silent and get into that death trap of a car. He had sacrificed his own life in a last, desperate attempt to save his son's soul. I looked out the window, where the remnants of the Christmas feast remained. Their betrayal last night was now more than just carelessness. It was an act of trampling upon Arthur's very sacrifice. They had taken that blood-soaked gift, and then turned their backs, abandoning me. The grief inside me dissolved, replaced by a cold rage, as hard as forged steel. Arthur's sacrifice would not be in vain. I would not let his death become a bargain for the soulless. I would make them pay, for the crime of murder and for the cruel betrayal of their father's love. The rage gave me a terrifying clarity. I picked up the phone containing Arthur's recording. This was the proof. But then I paused. I thought of the Lorenzo family's expensive lawyers, people who could twist any truth. This recording was a double-edged sword. It proved Julian and Isabel were guilty, but it also recorded Arthur's words, that he accepted his death. A good lawyer could easily argue this was a case of assisted suicide, that Arthur had acted willingly, and Julian was just a desperate son following his father's wishes. The charge would be reduced. They would not pay the true price for what they had done. Justice would be distorted. I could not accept that. I did not want them convicted of assisting a desperate father. I wanted them convicted of cold-blooded murder. And to do that, I needed a confession. An undeniable confession, from their own mouths. A plan began to form in my mind, cold and sharp. I needed a trap, and the bait would be my own weakness. I went into the living room and placed a tiny hidden camera, the kind used for home security, inside a fern on the bookshelf. Its lens was aimed directly at Arthur's armchair. I double-checked the angle on my phone. Perfect. Then, I picked up the telephone, taking a deep breath to steady my voice. I dialed Julian's number. When he answered, I let out a weak moan. Julian, it is Mom, I gasped, making my voice sound panicked and broken. I cannot breathe. My heart. Mom? What is wrong? I heard the alarm in his voice, but I knew it was not for me, but for the inheritance I was about to leave behind. Come quickly. I think. I'm not going to make it, I said, then hung up, giving him no chance to ask more. I quickly moved to Arthur's armchair and lay down. I closed my eyes, slowing my breathing until it was shallow and faint. I began to murmur, speaking delirious, fragmented sentences, just enough to sow terror in the minds of the guilty. Arthur, what did he do to it? The brakes. Your father knew everything. In the garage. The trap was set. Now I just had to wait for the predators to walk into it. I heard the screech of tires in the yard, followed by a car door slamming and hurried footsteps. I kept my eyes closed, continuing my performance, murmuring the keywords that would incite their fear. Mom! Mom! Julian burst into the room, his voice frantic. I heard Isabel panting right behind him. There was a pause as they looked at me, lying motionless in the chair. Damn it, Isabel hissed. She looks terrible. She keeps talking nonsense, Julian said, his voice trembling. She was talking about Dad, about the brakes, in the garage. What if she saw something? Fear had made him lose his composure. This was exactly what I had hoped for. Shut up! Isabel snapped, her voice cold. Nobody saw anything. She is just delirious. The important thing now is to find the will. If she dies without changing it, all our effort was for nothing. But she said Dad knew everything, Julian stammered. Isabel let out a cruel, chilling laugh. So what if he knew? He was a fool to the very end, thinking his death could change us. He got into that car willingly. Julian. He gave us everything we wanted. Those words were a knife in my heart. Arthur's sacrifice, in their eyes, was just stupidity. It was all for you, Julian screamed, the guilt and fear in his voice turning to accusation. I was the one who cut that line, and it was all for you. It was for us, Isabel shot back. Now stop being a coward and help me find the papers. That was enough. I had heard enough. I slowly opened my eyes. Silence fell over the room. Julian and Isabel stood frozen. Their faces morphed from alarm to absolute horror as they saw me sitting up, staring directly at them. Mom, Julian stammered, taking a step back as if he had seen a ghost. I heard everything, I said, my voice no longer weak, but clear and steely, echoing in the quiet room. I heard about the cut line. I heard about your father's stupidity. I heard it all. Isabel, after the initial shock, was the first to regain her composure. Her cunning nature took over. What are you talking about? She said, forcing a smile. You are sick. You are delirious. We were worried about you. That is why we rushed over. We did not do anything. She glanced at Julian, signaling him to play along. But Julian was too terrified. He just shook his head, his mouth moving without a sound. Delirious, I said calmly. Then you can explain this delirium to the police. I raised my hand and pointed toward the fern on the bookshelf. Their eyes followed my finger. First, there was confusion, then they saw it. A tiny black dot, almost invisible among the green fronds. The lens of the hidden camera. I did not need to say another word. I saw the complete and utter collapse in their eyes, like a dam breaking. All the calculation, all the cruelty, all the confidence washed away. Isabel's mouth fell open, her beautiful face contorting in terror. Julian sank to the floor, his hands clutching his head, and began to sob hopelessly. I rose slowly from the armchair, feeling the weight of my 70 years, but also an immense sense of relief. I picked up the landline phone. The sound of the dialing was crisp and deliberate in the room. Inspector Rossi. Hello, I said into the receiver, my voice perfectly calm. This is Ilara Moretti. I wish to provide new evidence for the accident of my husband, Arthur Moretti. Yes. I have an audio recording of his final words. And a video of the confession from the people who killed him. I will be waiting here. As I hung up the phone, I looked at the two figures crumpled on the floor. They were no longer the son I had loved, or the sharp daughter-in-law. They were just pathetic criminals, devoured by their own greed. With such irrefutable evidence, justice was delivered swiftly. The recording of Arthur's final words proved the motive and the perpetrator's extreme cruelty in knowing their victim had accepted his fate. The video of the confession proved the direct act of murder. Faced with this dual evidence, Julian and Isabel had no way out. They were convicted of murder and received the maximum sentence for their crimes. The Lorenzo family tried to intervene, but with such clear evidence made public, their power became meaningless. A few months later, I sold the house in Tuscany. It held too many memories, both happy and tragic. I could not stay in a place where Arthur's sacrifice had been trampled and human hearts had grown so cruel. I moved to a small apartment in Florence, where I could look out at the Arno River every morning. Peace returned to me, not the peace of forgetting, but a peace built on truth. Justice for Arthur had been served, and his soul could finally rest. In my new pottery studio, I began a new sculpture. It was not a pair of sheltering hands, but a single flame, burning strong and free, reaching straight for the heavens. That was Arthur's spirit. And now, it was my spirit too. A new life, reborn from the ashes of betrayal, completely free and unbound by the past.